Hello, this is cybersecurity expert Reginald Andre, and today is December the 20th, and we are live to give you an update on what is happening with the Solarwinds Orion big cyber hack that has really just changed the world. It is literally going to change the way cyber criminals work. It's going to train how security professionals like myself work. And one of the terms that you're going to start hearing very, very more often is what is called supply chain hacking. What does supply chain hacking has to do with what happened with the US government? Because many people are saying, okay, well, how exactly could someone really go after the US government? How could someone actually go after these Fortune 100 companies? I mean, surely they've had to have some type of detection. I mean, it's not like someone just walked in with a USB flash drive and just installed some type of malware and there wasn't red bells going off, right? Well, that's why we call it a supply chain hacking, because with a supply chain, it's basically the weakest link in a business. And in actuality, it's not that the government itself directly got hacked. One of their vendors that they use got hacked. So let me give you an example. I have this Dow soap here, for example. Well, Dow doesn't necessarily make the bottle. They don't necessarily make the label. They don't distribute it. They rely on companies to do this for them. And in an example of that, you see that Dow uses many different suppliers. For example, Target. A few years ago, Target had a huge, massive breach, and where a lot of credit cards were stolen, and actually millions of dollars of credit cards were stolen. And do you know how it happened? It happened through a supply chain hack, because they had an HVAC vendor, and an HVAC vendor is basically the one who controls the air conditioner. And Target wanted to give this HVAC vendor control of their air conditioner system. So that way, I mean, have you ever walked into a Target and the AC wasn't working, right? I mean, that's kind of like one of the most important things a retail business needs to have is a working AC, working heater, and running electricity. Well, in this case, Target had given one of its supplier chains access to be able to control the air conditioner system, to get alerts if there was any sensors or anything that was off. And in this case, the hackers were able to use that opening that the HVAC vendor had in order to get into Target system. And once this hacker put in this Trojan that was inside their system, what then happened is this hacker was able to then figure out how to get into the credit card system of Target, and that's how I believe it was about 3 million credit cards were stolen. So that is an example of a supply chain hack. Another example is a compromise, another hack that happened where it was a PDF editor. So you know how when, for example, you open up a PDF and you have all these different fonts? Well, PDF companies rely on other companies to provide them fonts. And in this case, you had a company that did fonts, and in that aspect, that font had malware in it. So essentially, when someone opened up the PDF with that font, the malware went into their computer. And it kind of like bypassed all the antivirus, it bypassed everything a typical person would think is protecting them. So this was another example of how a supply chain hack. And just more on realistic, we have a lot of our clients that are condominiums. Well, this could happen if you have a resident database, if you have, for example, elevator systems. That's a big, big thing, because a lot of times you'll have an elevator system or even a camera system. A camera system is actually even a better example, because with camera systems, the vendors are typically not really doing too much on the software. The vendors are more concentrated on, hey, a camera is out, let me go ahead and replace the camera. Okay, I can see the 32 cameras, the screen works, that's all I'm worrying about. But they're not worrying about the software, and many times these softwares run on licenses. And if you don't continue to renew the licenses and to get the updates, well, guess what? then hackers are going to go after that software, and they're going to see, okay, we know there's millions of people, or at least hundreds of thousands of these systems out there, and we know that people are just being cheap. Just to be frank, they're being cheap. They don't want to update the software of these camera systems, and now hackers are now trying to find flaws, and when they find the flaws in these camera systems, that's how they get into the computers. So again, a supply chain hack is basically the weakest link on the network, and hackers then try to go after that weakest link. And by going after that weakest link, because for example, a camera software, you can have, Vision Tech, High Tech, whatever, the Cantech, whatever companies you want. Antiviruses know that Cantech is a legit software. They know that's a legit software, so they allow that software to run the systems, to run on the system however it needs to run. So antiviruses are just basically not looking the other way, but it's just they're getting the green check mark. So because of they're getting that green check mark, that's when the hackers go in and they put the malicious code within the software. And even when maybe one of these camera systems, elevator systems realize, oh man, we have a vulnerability. Well, when are they going to do how are they going to release the vulnerability? They're going to release it in an update. And if the property or the building or whatever the case is, if the customer doesn't do the updates because they don't want to pay the license, well, now they're open to that vulnerability. So again, this is all what is called a supply chain hack, and this is why the federal government was able to get hacked. It wasn't necessarily their fault. It was their vendor's fault, but obviously the fallout is the federal government. That's who's getting the news, and of course SolarWinds Orion. So in this case with SolarWinds Orion, this is an application that is installed on the computers to monitor the systems, to remote into the systems, to allow the IT team to work. And in this case, the SolarWinds Orion application, there was some information within the application that got compromised, and then from there they were able to monitor the emails, steal information, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why it is so important that you are very careful on what you put on your computers. Businesses now have to look a totally new way of how they deal with their suppliers. If you're giving access to your suppliers on the network, be it I can even give you another example. We have a customer who's a manufacturer, and his suppliers have to come into the warehouse, and basically when the guy from the truck is coming to pick up the supplies, the driver has to use a tablet, and that tablet is an application basically for inventory, etc. Well, before we got there, what was happening is that driver who doesn't work for that manufacturer, he would basically log into the Wi-Fi, and this was the same Wi-Fi that everybody was using. And then from there, he would use his tablet to get the inventory before it goes in the truck. Well, if the hacker knew this and wanted to go after this company, maybe the manufacturer where the warehouse is, well, maybe they're secure, but the vendor that's coming into their building is not. And then from there, that's an entry point. So with cybersecurity, it's like a house, and it's all made of glass, and there's different windows everywhere, and you have to make sure that you account for every window. You have to make sure that every window is secure. So one of the things and feedback that we get also is, well, okay, look, U.S. government literally spends hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars on protecting the physically and protecting cyber. So how were they not able to catch this outside of the whole supply? I mean, can't they create a program or some type of system to protect this? And the answer is actually yes. They invested heavily on a multi-billion-dollar system known as Einstein Patrols. And what this did is it basically protects all federal government networks from malware, and it indicates them of an attack. So this was a really, something that the government did realize. It's like, okay, if the federal government as a whole, all of its agencies, its contractors, etc., if we were getting attacked, we need to know, and we need to not rely on a third party company to tell us. We have to have our own internal systems. And that's when they develop Einstein patrols. However, in a Government Accountability Office report, which is the GAO, they found that Einstein's effective is only in identifying known threats. So government spent all of this money, and unfortunately, it didn't do what it needed to do because it only identified no, known threats. That's like, for example, you own a bar and you have a bouncer in the front, and there's a list, and now everybody that's coming in, the bouncer has to check the list for them to come in. But if their name is not on the list, the bouncer just lets them in. So it kind of defeated the purpose. Like, yes, we're going to let the people that's on the list in. And for the government, what this Einstein patrol is, it knows what to look for, but it doesn't know what not to look for. And because it doesn't know it, it basically lets them in. So that's unfortunate. And one more thing is what you're also going to start hearing on the news is that hackers are going to start targeting supply chains with that deal with COVID. That's going to be big on the news now because you have Moderna, you have Pfizer, all of these companies. They don't just rely on their internal staff to assist them. You have, again, going back to HVAC, you have to have cold rooms for these medicines. You have to have the scopes for the scientists to use. Like, all of this stuff goes on the internet or somehow connects to the network. And now, again, what hackers are doing is they're going after the weakest link. They know that they can't necessarily just break into Pfizer's network, but they know that the company that supplies the petri dishes, for example, well, they have to communicate with Pfizer. And how do they communicate? They communicate by email. So then they start doing phishing, making it seem like, oh, it's one of our vendors that's emailing us. And then someone clicks on something, it downloads on the computer or whatever the case is. And before you know it, someone's on the news because they've been hacked. So I hope this video was helpful in explaining to you what is supply chain hacking. It is going to be something big that's going to be coming up in 2021. And unfortunately, it's going to be an all hands effort. I mean, everyone's going to have to start taking cybersecurity more seriously because honestly, this is a cyber war. This is something that the government's going to need to figure out. How do we stop getting nations to stop hacking us, and what do we have to do for this to stop happening? So it's going to be very interesting to see how the administration responds and how different agencies respond and what goes on from there. And if you've stayed this long to watch this video, please consider go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We go live almost every day, Monday through Friday, but because this hack is such a serious event, we had decided to go live today, which is a Sunday. And also like our page, and that way we know we can continue doing this and you enjoy watching these videos. Thank you.